way I think folks here were able to get this rolling. But it's great to be back in LA. We actually, I think, or we can test on that. We actually have a little place here that they really to see Venice. It's basically a big head with a door in it. Have you ever heard of Phineas and Ferb? It used to develop that. It's a little casita that we got from him. So Shin likes to call it a bush with a door in it. So that's we jumped at the chance to come back to LA, visit, and have a chance to visit with you all as well. So let me see if I can find my clicker. I'll dive right in. Lorcan said, monograph came up to the press a couple of years ago about practice. And of course, I do get hit quite a bit, where I'm at in Arkansas. It's like, well, how can you be radical in Arkansas? And of course, as was mentioned, really not using it in kind of the idea of avant-garde or revolution, or really thinking about that, that sort of 14th century adjective, from the Latin word radicals, really gets into this notion of root or fundamental. So it's proceeding from or to the roots. So our fidelity to roots and to the fundamentals is really necessary for us to affect change and transformation in our place or places in which we work. And Thoreau's word, I think he kind of is right by saying that heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads. So when we bring together, let's see if this will work. Trying to tell some gambling jokes right now. Goes to distilling machine. Well, so what I was going to say is, when we bring together disparate understandings or forces or observations of situation and place, we like to call these abstract unions. And abstract unions for us are found often in a place of unholy unions that encompass our approach and help us address questions of practice versus theory, of detachment from the world, engagement versus detachment from the world, and questions of form. And frankly, most of our work is in a place where detachment really isn't even an option, even if we wanted it to be, quite frankly. For Ati and I, my partner, our thought about abstraction is really, rather than a removal from reality, we look at abstraction as the process of connecting to place, generating a productive tension between the local and the global, I like to call it global. So looking for possibilities for using an economy of means for a maximum of meaning. So we're a firm of 25 based in Fayetteville, Arkansas, as the work said. For the last 30 years, we've been working on a variety of types and scales of buildings, everything from carports to schools, churches, healthcare, and just all types of buildings, all types of scales and budgets, even to now international work with the State Department, where we also have a new American embassy from the ground up in the poorest country of the world, the Central African Republic, which hopefully will start construction next year. So quite a range, and most recently, we've had the good fortune to work on a new air traffic control tower in Columbus, Indiana, which is, has their own sort of design excellence program that's been going on for 80 years. And this is really an opportunity to take infrastructure and imbue it with public spaces on the public plaza out front. And as you see, this tower that begins to move up and become infrastructure for the airport also is imbued public rooms. And you see as it begins to expand in the middle there. So about folks who kind of experience this idea of being an airport control tower. So very excited about this and hopefully we start construction on this next year. But just a range of projects, but really coming at it with a very similar ethos. So what we like to think of when we're thinking about this is that wherever we work, we try to see that place is the canvas, architecture is the medium, and it's shaped by the forces of nature and public life, and is particular to local form. We like to say we make work in the place, of the place, for the place, and sometimes necessarily out of the place in order to make that work. This is our office. It's an old mercantile building in Fayetteville that we bought, fixed up. We did it for $69 a square foot. So I know it's kind of crazy, even 5 years ago. So, but we took every window opening that was there. We decided to do an essay on windows we love. So always thinking about elements and spatial propositions as a way to develop a character without having to develop a very novel. And when you come here, when you walk in, you're always faced with the bear. I have a long story, but I won't be able to tell it today. When I was in high school, I was a wrestler, and I actually had to wrestle a live bear in practice one session. So it didn't turn out well. I only weighed 105 pounds. It was quite large. And also new wrestling moves. But nonetheless, we always think of this the existential moment when you walk into the office. You have to be prepared to take on the bear, these challenges that are much greater than you, right? But you have to take it on with great sense of purpose. And for us, place is really defined as a tangible representation of that intangible society that lives within. And I like to call this placeness. And thinking about placeness, and wanting to make an architecture of places, it's really necessary for us to embrace everything about a place, even the bad things, even the tortured histories of places, and to get below the surface to the underbelly and incorporate them in who we are and how we design and what an architecture of the place, in the place, for the place can be. And so often this is a story of transformation, taking the world as it's given to us and representing it on our terms. So we're always inspired in many ways by the patterns that connect, the patterns between what's nature made and what's culture as a source of inspiration in the work. And looking and operating at high culture and low at the in-between. So you'll probably notice this building on the left, that's Fay Jones' masterpiece, Thorncroft Chapel, considered to be top 5 best building of the 20th century by American Institute of Architects. It's in Eureka Springs, not far from where I live. And taking architects of all walks of life from there, everyone from Herzog and Muron, to Zumthor, to Eisman, all these folks. And they always come away with it with this really visceral sort of reaction to it, because in many ways it's architecture at the highest level. Now across town in Eureka Springs, it's kind of a tourist place. It's a tourist destination called the Passion Play, where tourists come and they see the life of Christ acted out in this sort of 3/4 inch thick version of Jerusalem and such. But anyways, what makes it unique is that it's the other icon in this area. And so they wanted to build this very large icon and statue of Jesus, and they started erecting it. It was so tall that they were informed by the FAIA that he would have to have a flashing blue light on the top of his head. And so rather than do that, they just cut him off at the knees and pushed him into the ground. And he's affectionately known as Milk Carton Jesus. So it has the proportions of a milk carton. Now, we don't see anything as a negative or a minus or whatever. We just understand that we work between these conditions. And we try to find resonance between, not to solve one to the other. In the same spirit, the ideal in our discipline and the more improvised in our discipline. And working between these conditions, again, not to resolve one to the other, not privilege one over the other, in an inclusive way, trying to find resonance with the things that we build. And it really opens up the book much wider in terms of what we can be inspired by. So just to illustrate this, is a small project that Morgan mentioned, a small church in Springdale, Arkansas. It's called St. Nicholas Eastern Orthodox Church, small community congregation of Orthodox Christians. They were worshiping in a really run-down office building in Springdale. And they have a very aestheticized ritual form of worship and a very old religion. But they didn't think they really had a very dignified place to worship. So one of their congregation members passed away and left them some money. And they were able to go out and buy some land. And right on the edge of the highway, about 3.5 acres. And they then contacted us and said, could you design us a new sanctuary and fellowship hall? And we said, absolutely, let's meet out at the site, because everything starts at the site, right? And we're out there, we're walking around, and you see this blue house here and this welding shed. And I said, okay, well, where do you want to, what are y'all thinking about? And they said, well, we'd like you to, we only have $100 a square foot. It's all the money we have left over from buying the land. Could you make that welding shed into a church? I said, you mean like tear it down and build on the footprint? They're like, no, we only have $100 a square foot. Could you make such a sanctuary out of a welding shed? And of course, our hearts sunk because we're thinking thorn crown. But we did what we often do, is just go back to the origins, go back to the roots of this particular denomination, the Eastern Orthodox. We looked at old Greek churches, early AD. We looked at the proportioning system that they were using. You very often found in the most common churches or even the great cathedrals, there was a similar pattern of proportion. So we used that to create this new figure here in just reshaping the church itself, the welding shed itself. And so it has everything they asked for. It has all the icons, the colors. It has this sort of sacred face towards the interstate, because they're right on the interstate. And then we add a little bit of Corbusier, because I believe everything goes better with cord. So that's the canopy there, you see the little marsh. And just a regular off the rack box roof metal system that we like to use for panels. What we do is we customize all the transition details so that we get a great deal of seamlessness, let's say, in detail. And how would we do this? Well, we took the existing shed, we left it as is, wrapped it in a new skin, a new substructure. We added 10 feet to the front of it to create a narthex by which you can move north-south to get on the east-west axes into the sanctuary for about 100 people. The walls open up to allow for an oversight and a fellowship hall. They're very simple. I call it the true American double skin envelope. And here it is here. And so those transition details really allow for things to seamlessly shift around. And then with a fidelity to craft, what we try to do with every project, no matter how modest, is think about the presence of the worker and the hand and how that can be elevated in some ways. And so we coursed every element to the ribs that we had, just in a very carefully precise dimension. And so everything is neatly fitted in with the windows, the canopies, at the door that you see the concrete pad, that's actually the fire doors, neatly as part of the site. So all of that to get to the level of abstraction we wanted. When they cut one window on the inside, let light roll in. The space is all done with Greek proportioning as well. They got conostasis made out of local spar stock that you get. But they really wanted a dome, and we had told them before we could not put a dome on the church because of the pre-engineered structure. So they allowed us to put it in the plenum, but they couldn't afford the dome that we had spec'd for them. They just didn't have the money. And our contractor was saying, I don't know if I can build one that would be acceptable to your level of craft. And so what do we do? He goes, well, I have friends. And so he came back a few days later. So I got this friend of mine, he's a retired metal worker, lives out in the mountains about 40 miles away, and he loves beer. For 2 cases of beer, he'll trade us a satellite this year. So we were in the middle of construction, so we trucked it out 20 miles away to the site. It's its own natural lap, we skin coated it in plaster, jacked it up on a scissor lift, and we have our dome. So that's how we roll it up. So one of the building committee members was so excited about this kind of approach. He said, I know where we can get a big throne where the bishop comes to bless us. It's all walnut, it's got crushed purple velvet upholstery, and I can get it for free. I said, oh, really, where? He goes, well, it's part of a ad campaign at the local liquor store. They said, when it's over, I can have it. That's great. And he said, the only thing I'm worried about is it's got this embroidered CR on it. I said, oh, what do you mean? He said, Crown Royal. And Father John, who was standing around next to us, walked over and overheard us and said, no, Christ the Redeemer. So in 2013, we were notified by the Institute Honor Awards, AI Institute Honor Awards, that this little project had won an Institute Honor Award. And they said we were so impressed with the budget on this that we did some research and we went back to the whole history of the awards program, discovered this is the least expensive building to ever win an Institute Honor Award. So we were just thrilled to hear that because it underscored what Ati and I and our whole team, our whole talented team, have been trying to do for the last 30 years, is to continue to demonstrate that architecture can happen anywhere, at any scale, at any budget, for anyone. It's not reserved for the few. It should be accessible by everyone. And that's the approach that we take. So in that spirit, this idea of transformation of a building, we also can think about transformation of a landscape as well. So we had that opportunity to do this in Shelby Farms Park in Memphis, Tennessee. This is a 4,500-acre urban park, the largest in the country. And it was what we did with fuel operations, James Corner and his team. They were already working on it a few years. We were brought in to really look at the heart of the park and how to generate new identity for the park, greater access from all the constituents of Memphis. It did not reflect the socioeconomic and racial diversity of Memphis, and actually get it in profitable in the black, because it was constantly just barely surviving, barely hanging. And so part of the park is really this 200-acre area where they've expanded a lake, and we were asked to generate 7 or 8 new programs, new structures, a sort of ensemble of figures that would activate around the park and in those spaces between. I think Corner came up with planted over 1 million trees in the park itself. So really exciting collaboration there. But the history of this is really quite tortured. So you might recognize the Mississippi River here and the skyline of Memphis, where rock and roll was born, and Great Barbecue, and there's Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley and Jerry Lewis. All of that's going on back in the 50s. But even before that, predating back into the 20s. The other side of Memphis in this park area was a prison farm. And this is where prisoners actually farmed the land. They had blue ribbon cattle, and they basically, that's how they fed themselves. Or whatever they had left over was sold back to the county. So in the 70s, when this was no longer a acceptable form of rehabilitation, it was turned back over to the county. They were trying to figure out how to manage it. It was well beyond their capacity. Developers started wanted to group together to turn it into, developed housing, suburban kind of development, and the citizens around there stood up and said, no, this is a great natural habitat. We want a park. And so they formed a 501c. That's how Shelby Farms came about. So you begin to see that we sort of worked along the edge, and really JCFO also developed more programmed activities along the lake. One of the things we noticed when we're out on the site is that wherever there was shade, there was people. No shade, no people. It's pretty common sense. But we realized that we were in the middle of old pastures for these projects, and that landscape was going to take a while to come in. So we realized that every building had to create its own shade. And so we were thought about, again, back to roots, back to origins, the vernacular, the ways in which breezes were created through dog trots, breezeways, porches. This is well before air conditioning. But we went and thought about that. So our first building is an 8,000 square foot visitor center with an 8,000 square foot porch. And so it all kind of right towards the south, made out of a very simple palette of materials. We just took local bar grate, aluminum bar grate, and turned that into a cladding system, create sort of a diaphanous skin with a local third growth cypress planks, and then like metal panels where we could use them. And these extended breezeways that are cut through provide obviously cooling effect, but they also set up these beautiful extended threshold into the landscape, these uninterrupted views. And then the shade 32-foot cantilever basically shades this part of the building year-round, so they can actually program it to create other revenue streams like yoga, receptions, other things that are going on out there. And to cool it, of course, if you're in Memphis and you're in the shade, that doesn't mean you're cool. It just means you're out in the sun. You have to ventilate. And so we did that with 25, so 20-foot big asphalt. So that keeps through. And that's a trade name. So here we are. Here you can see the diaphanous skin, the way in which light moves through. It really changes its color throughout the day because it's taking the temperature of light and capturing that and representing it to us. And beautiful configuration, I would say, of the land by corner really fixes every building that's to the site. We have, again, a collection of these buildings, the picnic pavilions, we like to call the crickets. These are booked out for months. They great shade pavilions, but they're great places too for family reunions. And it's really become quite popular with the citizens this year. And then the boathouse with its canoes, its paddle boards, kayaks and so forth. Its own porch there and some concession stand. Again, using the same palette of materials as reductive as we can make it. Try never to use more than 2, maximum 3 materials for any project. The stage pavilion for the event lawn, and then on the other side are the events that happen on the lake. And so this kind of does both. And then when it's not being used, it makes a really great shade pavilion and gathering spot in the park. And then finally, the restaurant event center, so 500-seat conference area, along with a large, a restaurant with a very large porch. We initially worked with Kimball Musk, Elon Musk's brother, you never hear of, but he has this food-to-table restaurant called The Kitchen out of Denver, out of Boulder. And this was their first round-up restaurant here. And it really has a beautiful interface with the lake, with this extensive porch. It's 80-foot deep. Most of the people sit outside, have these great sunset views of the lake beyond. And what's happened since it opened in 16, one, the attendance is more than doubled. The racial diversity and the socioeconomic diversity has increased by over 7%. And then it's been profitable ever since it's opened too. So it sort of demonstrates how we can at least strengthen institutions, and these transformations can happen at scale. Landscapes, buildings, details, all of those things are possible, have real value. So in that spirit, Morgan and I were just talking about work in Detroit, the challenges, trying to do work in Detroit, a place where there's more emptiness, really more space than form, right? And how do you do that? How do you leverage emptiness? And how do you deal with this urgent condition and nutrition that's often happening in this town in its effort to kind of revitalize its communities and its urban situation? So this is on the Marygrove College campus, 6 Mile in Detroit. It's the Marygrove Early Childhood Education Center. And this liberal arts college, African American liberal arts college, had beginning to lose enrollment, and they got into financial difficulty back in 17, I believe, and basically had to shut down. Fortunately, the Kresge Foundation stepped in and said, we can repurpose this campus, we can transform it into a cradle-to-career campus for 1,000 students here in the 6 Mile community and further on into Detroit. And the cornerstone of that transformation would be the Early Childhood Education Center, which is really where lifelong learning begins. It's critical to get that right. And this, basically, this campus had been the backbone of this community for the Nichols Livermore community for quite some time. It's about 1.5 miles from Detroit Mercy, but they really needed to see something happen with this campus rather than just sort of wither away. So what we're asked to do is a 25,000 square foot building, but it had to be only 1 story because of the children are only from basically infant to kindergarten. And so we developed a mat building, but carved out a series of courtyards, controlled areas of play, also ways to bring light in to the interior of the building, and of course, sort of generate the wayfinding organization for the building as well. And you can see that most of the campus is this collegiate Gothic limestone building, so how to respond to that as well. This is the context it sits in the campus. You see all the single-family homes here. It's a very kind of vital place. There's lots of emptiness as well, but it is the way to bring this back is through education. One thing about Detroit, if you know anything about it, all the hipsters are moving there, and they're all moving out as soon as they start having kids because of the education system. So we've got to figure out how to fix this. This is the first step in that direction. So we were asked to not do the community engagement. It really had to be done by folks who had the trust of the community, who've been there a long time. So that was Dan Piquera, lead of Detroit Mercy has a group that has a lot of trust with the community. So they did that. Of course, and they kept coming back with the aspirations. The community wanted for new identity, a community center, a sense really of ownership of this particular piece. And one of the things they sort of insisted on was that they did not want monochromatic building. They wanted polychrome, which Wendy Jackson, the vice director of Cressy, also seconded. And so she and I got into a conversation about this, like, well, how do we do that? It's terrifying for an architect to take polychroma from the inside and put it on the outside. Well, in our talking, we started talking about the Great Migration, we started talking about Southern culture, and we came on this common experience that we had both been to Gee's Bend, the quilt ladies at Gee's Bend in Alabama, which we're originally from. And so I'd been there several times, and so we began to think of this as a coat of many colors, a kind of quilt, and a way of, the same way in which these ladies take discarded rags and cloth and stitch it together into these beautiful, useful works of art. We thought, maybe we could kind of stitch this all back together. So, and it had to be durable, and it had to relate to the existing stuff. So we came up with a material of glazed terracotta mainstream panels. That's how we did this. And we had to make a base that would relate to the sand, but we had to get color in there too. Every color costs money, and there's a limit to that. So we really went down to Gee's Bend. I did it. Just spent some time with the Pettaways there, just kind of going through the co-op, these beautiful quilts that they make there, just kind of getting a sense of how that could work and how they do so much with so little in terms of how they position color, because they don't have a lot of everything, right? And so that's how it kind of came to this, and it really, I think, made a great connection with the community. Again, something that is one of a kind that they can call their own. And then we looked at ways to grab light from the side, from above, from the front, help articulate, again, this idea that elements, doors, windows, columns, and such can be spatial propositions. And so just a very gentle kind of welcoming of that wall that sort of inclines or inflects into the building here and welcomes people in, families. And of course, the front of the first courtyard here, the lobby on the left is a coffee shop for families, and on the right, community spaces that can be used even after hours. And then again, these are controlled places for play, but great places for light. Every space in this building is a learning or educational space. The circulation space is never truly circulation. It's always used for learning some form. All the classrooms are oriented adjacent to the outside or to a courtyard. And we're using a kind of sectional device we call pitch and roll that begins to create the plenum for mechanical up above, but creates a sectional difference in every room in the space itself. Again, to move beyond some false notions of democratic space, which everybody gets the same thing, into ideas around choice and similarity and variety. And just finding ways like carving away in the hallway to make this nice reading nook. Every classroom has direct access to the outside. If you're having a lesson, you can go out and make an analog analogy to something outside. It's really great that kind of thing. And then just different types of places for they can take their lunch there. They can have a lesson, play, very multi-purpose. And then, of course, in the community spaces, all lit from above, there's lots of activity that can happen, again, as a way to bring families together and to strengthen also the community organizations. And the courtyards spill out and into this grove of trees to the south. This is a landscape done by Margie Ruddick, who I think did an excellent job of weaving together an education, learning playscape, which is really quite active. And then in the evening, of course, everything is lights up and acts as a type of lantern or beacon. And one of the nice things, I'll just go back real quickly to this, is this is also the access for families in the neighborhood who want to walk to drop off their children. So it has this sort of double front, but it makes it part of the neighborhood that surrounds the campus. went back to G's Bend a few months after this was built. Just by chance, it was with my family, son's age. I just exploring Alabama a little bit more, and we visited with them just to see what they had. In any event, I had my phone, and I said, "Hey, look, here's a building that finally got built. You know that we were so inspired by your quilts." And she looked at it, Marianne Bentley. She said, "You know, you've just given me an idea for a quilt." So it kind of all circled back around somehow. So. We've been working on probably the largest project next to the, well, in the U.S. anyway, that we've ever had to work for the last 4 years. Came along right before COVID. We got the contract. COVID started. Interesting double whammy that way. But it takes place on the campus of Crystal Bridges Art Museum in Northwest Arkansas. Now, if you know or are familiar with the Ozarks, we're really known for our karst topography, these beautiful, gentle mountains, and we're 60% forested in Arkansas, so we have beautiful hardwood forest too. So this idea of the cave in the forest is something that's really always embedded in Arkansas, especially too when you look at the work of Faye Jones. These were the analogs that really helped guide him along the way how he worked with the land. And you know, our cash crop in Northwest Arkansas is rocks. We have to grow a lot of rocks because the soils are really thin. Hard to grow anything there, so I've had a lot of chickens and beef. The campus here, as you see, is called Crystal Bridges for a reason. It's a museum that sort of stretches over a creek with my Moshisaki. It was built in 2011. We were asked to come in to propose the Heartland Whole Health Institute, which is an institute centered on well-being, life management, challenge to the existing healthcare system is really about treating sickness. This is about preventing sickness. This is about how we live. And this is a National Institute of Alice Walton, and then a new 800-car parking lot. She's also building a medical college and a new hospital, all based on these concepts. This is Crystal Bridges Museum, which is soft. But what we were really interested in is the local vernacular. And what folks who didn't have a lot of money did many years ago, they would just find stone on the ground that they were making a house or a church or structure. They would use that for cladding, and they just kind of cut it as they could, big round joints to help hold it together. We call this giraffe stone. We thought, here's an opportunity to sort of connect the place, to make that sort of connection with the earth, with topography, as a base to this building, and the cave, so to speak. And then top that line allow the forest to sit strong. So the Whole Health Institute, really, we're developing an abstraction of that vernacular and operating at a much larger scale, 20-foot high walls. And then atop that is a curved, this is all the offices, area above all the public spaces are down to the ground. Exhibition, event spaces, consultation, that sort of thing. Where all the offices are. But that is a pre-weathered grass, curved frisolet on the east side. And here are the two materials and how they work together. And we're taking this frisolet and we're actually chamfering the edges of it so that it catches shadow and light. And as the sun moves, this thing flickers in real time, very slowly. And then this stone, these are really large pieces of stone because we're scaling up, right? So it's under construction right now. We just kind of give you an idea of how that's starting to come together. And you begin to see how it wraps itself around this ravine to create a vent lawn and gestures the other way to the pedestrians that are walking through onto the campus. This is, again, another extended threshold into the Crystal Bridges Art Museum campus. And then you can see they cross over a gorge from the parking area called Park Park. The section here shows these ravines and valleys where these things interface. Just to kind of understanding formally what we're trying to do. And we're always looking for shade for porches, that are sometimes they're designed, but they're also provided. And so how these are programmed is the way to see that there are big plans already with a community porch up at the top as well. You can see how it brings that vent lawn under construction here. This should be done so the contractors keeps it. And so the material strategies are very simple. Like I was saying, we're beveling the fins. We're really looking at striated bark or local white oak as a way of kind of how we thought about that, about how that bark around tree captures the sun and the shadow over the course of the day, making that the same way. Full-scale mock-ups, one-to-one mock-ups, really testing ideas and make sure we get the details right before we start on them. So this is a museum-level quality building, so we're considering this our first one. You can see it now going up around the sun's lighting and such. And then just a kind of sense of how those portals and shade porches areas work. So really becomes a threshold. So we're really playing with some ideas of counter space, shadow, and light. But always making light a feature here, even in the stone. So we're using what we call rope joints. So we're using joints that sit around, they're strong to hold the stone in place. They create great shadow play as well. So we're looking at architecture in this case, like you mentioned, and all I need is about an inch and a half to really kind of develop a highly vital surface. Kind of get a sense of how that's all going. So everything has to flow. So we have a lot of rounded edges and so forth. The interior, same idea of the forest and the cave here with the stone floors. This is all local milled pecan to develop this beautiful canopy that happens on every floor. You can see that now under construction as well, the grand stair. But upstairs is a lot of office space, so it's an open office area with a series of bigger conference rooms, consultation rooms that articulate this big open space that's really lit from the east and west side. So there's a lot of daylight, very little official light. There's meditation spaces. This is one 30-foot cone. We wanted to capture the light from the north, but we didn't want you to see the source of the light, so we took the cone and bent it to the north. And this sort of anti-space you come in to kind of decompress. You can see that in the section, how it begins to kind of fold over. And then so we're trying to figure out how to build. They actually built it from the top down, which I thought was interesting. We heard of means and methods. We had no idea this would be more of it. They figured it out. That's why they're builders. But this is all coming together. This will all be coated in Venetian plaster white. It has a really beautiful effect, spiritual. So, and really, ultimately, what this becomes about is an intersection between art, nature, architecture, and health. That these things can all intersect to create a better sense of well-being, a better sense of how we manage life, right, rather than just how we manage things. I think it's got a great mission to it. Across the ravine there, we had to do this 800 square foot parking garage to take place in the surface parking but it was new building. One of the things we challenged the owner about was like, well, why couldn't it be more? Could 1 + 1 = 5? What he means, what if you had a proscenium for art? This interfaces with a plaza and a playscape that goes down into the ravine. And so, and then what if you had a bar? And then what if you had a retail? Just asking these questions. And so let's try that. So we developed this big 150-foot wide by 4-story proscenium for art, for display of art, performances. And then underneath the big porch, inserted bar, retail. See onto the plaza. And you can see how it starts to work here. And they built it, which is amazing. So this is currently this parking lot, but we call it Art Park. People come out of the garage and they go down the stairs onto this great porch, underneath into the bar. You can see below. And then there's the water play area. It's filled with kids and families all day long. So another part of the access into the park. And this is that professionally shot with the bar, which really opens up all the sides and becomes part of the porch here. Now, one of the things we've been experimenting a lot with is how to create specificity just in the surface in an economic way. So we use a lot of metal, and I remember Fay Jones would always use on his metal particular automotive body paint. I think it was like a 70 Chrysler or something. Chrysler. It's a why? So why do you use that? Because, well, it lasts 40 to 50 years. Okay? It costs $500 a gallon. It lasts a long time, so that's great. So we got together with PPG and Sherwin-Williams, and we've started doing custom car colors for the building. So this is my grandmother's 65 Pontiac Tempest, Agua Azur, so we use metal flake in that. And that was used to customize this whole thing. And the premium on this, if you're using Los Metal, is not practical metal. So it's a great way to work with these folks to get kind of bespokeness, I think, into your standardized metal building. And here you kind of get a sense now of how that all kind of comes together as a building. And then we programmed it at night to do its own sort of things through light and through performance. You always think about the buildings have light after the sun sets. So we're doing our first tall building in Boston. Well, actually, Allston, right across the river, right across from the Harvard Business School. This is a joint venture between Tishman Speyer developers and Harvard. It's called the Enterprise Research Campus. It's on in an old industrial railway parkway area. And they brought together 4 architects to make this new campus. It's really about innovation, about creativity, and a kind of collective. It has housing, it has labs, a conference center, and a hotel. And through the middle of all of it, in the community, is a greenway done by Skate. So we have ourselves, MBRDV, and Larson, and Gene Yang working on this. So you begin to see the Charles River and the proximity and right across Western Ave from the business school. How that greenway kind of moves through, connects to the river. Our project is right up on Western Ave. And the master planning had already been done when we got it. What we were given was this master plan, massive, like a table, a block, and a tower. And we started to think, what if we could establish true totality by beginning to combine the two into a single figure? So we kind of saw that campus existing master plan is like a still life. It's really massive. We wanted to make a portrait in the midst of a still life. So this visage of a building and then activate the ground floor through local retail programming. It's a 265 room hotel. We're doing the core and shell primarily of that. And they wanted to shape it to the skyline and context. So a series of porches that reach out to Allston and to the laneway, into the greenway, and then one big snout from the thing towards the Boston skyline. There's a bar there. And then enhance the streets around it with this great landscape. So here you go. It sets up the views for that. These are all actual views. And then you get to kind of see the figure and then how it meets the ground and how it meets the sky in a very purposeful and particular way. And scale to folks at the ground level, and really scale to the city up above. And then one of the things we've done is we wrapped it on 3 sides of this very beautiful scallop metal. And then the north side is all glass, so really taking the life of the building, the hotel, and exposing that right up to the street here. And then these porches, like I said, they begin to scale, they begin to provide places to hang out, places to eat. Again, we're using all local retail. Entrance into the hotel along the street. Another porch in the back of Allston. The housing by MBRDV has 25% affordable housing, which is the largest ratio in Boston to the state. So that's a great aspect of this too, getting more of Allston there. We all had to do a mock-up, so it's all about getting the material palette to work. This is our sort of scallop flat. We wanted our automotive body paint, the metal flake and all that. We're all excited. We picked this beautiful champagne luster. And then they hired a fabricator in Europe, which doesn't allow them. They only do powder coat, which I'm not too happy with. But nonetheless, it's quite nice. So this is it in rendering. And at night, it sort of comes alive through the sheerness of the facade, which is all kind of inverted mullions. And a little bit of construction currently under construction here. So they're moving quickly. Pretty exciting. So one of the things that has defined us as a firm is being able to try to look for opportunities to enrich the everyday, and enrich the experience of the everyday through sometimes the most prosaic materials or systems. So when I was working in Detroit, I was asked by a developer there, Phil Kafka, to consider doing a mixed-use development in Fort Worth, Texas. And we were quite excited about it. And he had been known for years. He wanted to take a simple system of Quonset hut and see if we could bring it into an urban condition as mixed use. He had only done it for pockets of housing in downtown Detroit. Typically, this is how you find a hut. But we're now asked to do 8 units with offices, a restaurant, grab-and-go, vegan ice cream, grab-and-go, which is kind of cool, so tasty, and a small bookstore gallery. And so this would come up. This is in an emerging neighborhood, Magnolia in Fort Worth. And so it was an opportunity to really think about how we address the street. And rather than develop this all 5 stories and all to the plot lines, Philip's idea is to always be generous, to give something back to the community, public space, mixing public and private. So we have 1 story, commercial restaurant along the street edge, and in the backdrop is the housing and offices. And of course, you know, there's this building not far away that we were really like, well, you know, here's an idea that we can work on, and a way to ennoble the prosaic. But as we got into our research, we discovered that Mr. Khan had already tapped into that. Where he was getting his ideas from was actually from the stockyards there in these buildings here. So anyways, it was nice to kind of tap into that vein of thinking. But we're really developing the street edge in the ways. These are put up in about a day and a half once you get the base done. It's all prefabricated in Canada. The big trick that we had to play here, this is structure for us, the vertical 3-story vaults. But we wanted to make a consistent language, so we had the idea of flipping the Quonset on its side and turning it into cladding, the same big corrugation for the 1-story buildings. And that's how we set this up to get the consistent vocabulary. But then it gave us opportunities to make windows and doors and openings and create our own custom detailing for that. Like this window in the corner that extends out to the street. It's actually the kitchen, so you walk by and you can see the chef and the sous chef working inside. You have to make that connection between what's being prepared and what's actually being presented. This is a public plaza by Julie Gardner, dirt. It's all recycled, repurposed stone with 2 types of trees. There's cypresses, pond cypress and regular cypress. Most landscape architects use these as edges or walls. She uses some like jazz notes to make space in and around it. It will eventually grow up and develop the building. So she's really thinking of the machine and the floors here. And then, of course, the ice cream shop here, and the way in which we can develop jams and the heads and how these things kind of come together. There are also the kit parts, the alleyway, or back porches, and offices below. And we even got the shape of the tree. I'm not sure. The tree was already there. I'm not sure when. Inside, very simple vault. You have a service area, bedroom, bathrooms, mechanical, kitchen, all out just multiplied with. The interstitial spaces between are also very activated for the public as well. And it's really become absorbed and welcomed by the community. And now small businesses in the offices are being inserted, like this barber shop. So it really has found a way to connect at the scale of this neighborhood rather than sort of one size fits all. So very excited about this, and it's been a huge success so far. Maybe a little bit ahead of its time for this place, but I think what we see, it would be good to see what it begins to generate for the future of the community. And our rear window moment, we got everybody to raise their shades. It's pretty time that happened to get this one great shot. Tim Bursley is a master of persuasion. So another project I'm just about done. Sorry we got such a late start, but yeah. Well, I'm trying to think about how to introduce this a little bit. In Bentonville, Arkansas, I don't know if you'll know this, but real development of the culture of that place around biking and mobility. It is now the #1 mountain bike destination in the country. We had an opportunity to do a co-working office for the first round up working with their team, headed by Michel Oshkin, you know of, architect from Mexico, and his team, Christian Callahan, Rucci, James Slade, a host of folks. It was a kind of design collaboration between our team and their team. And the idea was to allow the building to be shaped by this notion of mobility, bikeability, walking, and manifest the culture through the building itself. So it's billed as the first bikeable building in the U.S. So it's 200,000 square foot building, about 5 blocks from the town square in Bentonville. It's only a town of about 50,000 people. So you get to see it. So really thinking about how you take public space and allow it to elevate, right? And it creates a series of terraces for the public. So this intersection between the public and the private creates a sort of ambiguity, a sort of real sense of community, right? Between. And then a parking garage here for public art. It's all clad in these kind of warm copper panels, glass here. And everything's 1 to 19. No, it's there was a 1 to 21. That's what it is. So you control the rails and demands here, but you can walk or bike up, and again, there's a series of pauses with terraces, all the way to the top floor, the 6th floor, with beautiful views over the town. And then working with Stefan Sagmeister on big public art for it as well. So it really tries to create another type of value proposition in the community. And it's incredibly used. We didn't know if people really want to get bikes. It really has become an extension of the Greenway. And they have now First Fridays, and it's how many people can populate this building. First Fridays up the cool thing about it was we were worried about the massing, 6 stories in a small town. So the ramps help set up the way to step it back. So when you're actually on the ground floor, it really feels like a 1-story or 2-story building that you breezeway into the city park on the other side. And this nice interface between exterior and interior, this sort of activity, idea of very collegial work environment, a variety of different types of spaces and different types of event spaces, office spaces, that sort of really populate the building itself. And it's pretty cool just to be sitting there working and see people kind of glide by above you. Quite interesting. But as I've already foregrounded, it's been a big hit. It really kind of demonstrates another idea about public space and how it can be used to articulate the building itself. The last project I'm going to share with you is a school. We really kind of committed to doing schools wherever we can, one of the most impoverished building types in the country. This is a maker school in Bentonville, 8 blocks of the town square. The person you see here, her name is Louise Thaden. I'm sure you've heard of Amelia Earhart. Well, Louise was a contemporary of Amelia Earhart. She grew up in Bentonville. She was a pioneer in aviation. She learned to fly planes as a barnstormer in Bentonville, and eventually moved to California, then to Kitty. And she set 2 records for the Bendix cross-country air race, where she beat both men and women. You know, her and Amelia Earhart, they were asked not to enter. They weren't really, I would say, qualified, so to speak, anyway. She would. And so she just had this really pioneering spirit about her. That's what we use for this maker school called the Thaden School. It has 3 signature programs where you learn by doing and making. It's called Wheels, Reels, and Meals. So every student gets a bike, they learn to work on bikes, they learn how to fabricate, fix bikes. They learn how to tell stories using animation and film, reels, and then they learn how to produce food, how to grow food, how to prepare it, and go to teaching kitchens. And all of these create a collateral, a curriculum that connects the 3. So we're in a 30-acre site that used to be the old fairgrounds, and actually, in the turn of last century, the high school, where Louise Thaden actually went to school. So rather than look at where would he go? Quad City or something like that. We're looking at farmhouses and farm groupings and barns as a way to master plan this. And really think common sensibly about how you lay out buildings relative to the sun, movement. And so it really is, we're layering by design through the landscape, through circulation, through how water management, through programming, and this kind of community geothermal. So it's, all of this becomes a didactic landscape that students can learn. And there's no canopies, there's no fences around the school. It's index tuition. That means that anybody that wants to go can go. Your tuition is based on what your family makes. So I know one student, his family had a food truck, and she paid $500 a year. She's now at Westlake. So their graduation rate into college is 100%. And so everybody, and some people are paying $25,000. So very, very good. And so we came up with a series of buildings working with SQ Dumas, Ripple, Andrew Pogon. SQ Dumas did the home building you see in the light gray, did the report the other buildings, and then the landscape. It's the Andrew Pogon, and of course the master plan is this collaboration between us. Very quickly, the Reels building, we're again using pitch and roll to get daylight into the middle of the building, but also to create that variety, the different configurations of the spaces themselves. This folding pops up at the end. This is also where film and animation is. So it's actually used by the community. It's a silver lawn, and that's a project films and that. It's part of the film festival every year. So that's a big thing. Back to the car colors, in this case, the 67 Shelby GT Cobra, combined with Osage prairie grasses. We made our own custom color. We're working with Sherman Williams here, and it's really great how it works at the beginning and it changes quite a bit in the light. Every one of these linear buildings are cored out to create a cross axis through the site, through the campus. These are also thresholds, breezeways, and outdoor classrooms that the students use as well. And then we skylight these, and they're really places of transition, but also places to linger in. Of course, the best place to linger in is in the hallways of the social space. You don't see any lights in this; it's all daylit, and then we use kind of uplight. So it's just regular old plywood. They wanted white oak, we didn't have the money for that, so we just used regular old plywood without window stamps. Just a boxwood metal system here. This folding allows us to change the shape and be able to create articulation for sound and for light. And then the Wheels building, its companion building, has a really great bike shop, all the fabrication shops, wood shop, robotics, and it brings us a great porch on the main street. Landscapes to the south, and then the inside, the same similar idea of folding, pitch and rolling of the roof. This data that organizes everything. Project labs and the hallways, everything is used again as a classroom of some sort. The bike shop here. They have a program of community engagement on weekends with fixed bikes for folks in the community. Pull it out underneath this porch here. So the building you see beyond is a performance building. So what ties a lot of this together is music, drama, theater. So this was designed actually while I was at the academy. So a little bit of Rome got in there, 300-foot long loggia, first one in Northwest Arkansas, or in Arkansas. But rather than put the building in the corner, we kind of slid down. We have a public plaza there, a lot of bikers, skateboarders that use it. And then, not to be outdone by its other companion buildings, we're using a 71 Gold Creek Camaro paint and cladding on this one. This one with the live window. So the stage is level with the ground, 350 acres of road to 750 the audience. And then a section of that is revealed in the massing or elevation of the building itself. There is no lobby, it's just a big porch, and that's where all the kind of activity, it's shared by the community, so this is community and school, this is the interface. Once you go inside, the right, that's the intro, the left are the music and drama practice rooms that you see. The right will slip in between these walls into the auditorium, it's all clad in local red oak plywood, with one big window is developed with this beautiful hand trowel plaster this connection to nature is still a classroom. Creates this beautiful soft figure amongst all these hard, crispy plants. Makes a nice backdrop for all the activities that are happening. The last building on the campus of this ensemble is the big bike barn. So biking's a big deal. They wanted a place to play some basketball and do some things. The headmaster wanted it as a real barn because they're called the barnstormers. We stayed was a barnstormer and stuff, pilot and put through barns. And so they wanted it built in such a way that it would self-ventilate itself, just like an old barn. So this is our version of the Ozark barn, which I've been working on 30 years. So it was just one of the times when commission fell on your lap to something you were interested in. Here is located on the campus adjacent to the soccer field, but it also has a bicycle pump track, which is again public and shared as well. A series of dormers that are ventilated so that every other window pops up so to create this chimney effect. And through the skin as well, the skin has joints, it's copper screen behind it, so it breathes through in between every board. Porch to the soccer area where the bikes just kind of hanging out. And then it's all wood building. I don't know much about Arkansas. University of Arkansas is a big leader in mass timber. Grafton's first building going up, all of the mass timber buildings. It's really fantastic. We didn't have a need for mass timber, so what we did, we used a mass up. So a lot of local truss manufacturers kind of game nail, a bunch of 2x together with some push plates. That's how we made it easier. But hey, it's all good. And then just thinking along that lines of how to make the elements of the mezzanine, the stair. We took the same kind of resourcefulness that the farmer used. We took a 2x4, cut a 2x4 in half diagonally, flipped around the back so it was very close. And that became this information. And then just again, the fidelity of the craft, just getting these guys to line things up, just getting the lights lined up and the joints lined up. Big victory. And then our lighting designer came up with a nice idea that as the sun begins to set, it's opaque during the day, but as the sun begins to set, it starts to become somewhat translucent, so when it drops over the horizon, it becomes transparent and acts as a type of beacon for the campus and a great lantern. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm sorry we ran a little bit late, but